The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a credit card statement and a grocery store flyer. At first, I didn't think much of it. Another legal notice. Probably a mix-up. I almost tossed it aside, but something about the embossed letterhead caught my eye. I tore it open, my fingers moving instinctively, not expecting the words inside to send a shockwave through my entire being. Dear Miss Carter, we are writing to inform you that, due to a legal technicality regarding the settlement of your divorce case, ownership of the apartment at 1745 Lakeview Drive has reverted to you, effective immediately. I read it again, then again. My breath hitched, my hands shook. No, it couldn't be 6 years. 6 years since I walked out of that apartment for the last time, leaving behind not just a home, but my dignity, my stability, my entire life. 6 years since Daniel, my ex-husband, had stripped me of everything, using his expensive lawyers and ruthless nature to ensure I got nothing. He had sat across from me in that courtroom, his face a mask of cruel satisfaction, as the judge ruled in his favor. I had fought, begged for fairness, but Daniel always played the long game. He always won, except this time. He hadn't. I stared at the words, trying to grasp what they meant. Ownership had reverted to me? How? Why? It didn't make sense. And then the realization hit me like a freight train. Daniel didn't know yet. A slow, trembling smile spread across my face. I reached for my phone, my fingers dialing the number on the letter with a kind of nervous energy I hadn't felt in years. A man answered on the second ring, his voice calm and professional. Thompson and Associates. How may I help you? Hi, this is Olivia Carter. I just received a letter regarding an apartment. My old apartment, actually. I need to confirm. This isn't some mistake, is it? Miss Carter. The voice softened. No, it's not a mistake. I've reviewed the case personally. Due to an oversight in the original transfer of assets, your ex-husband never fully completed the legal process required to claim the property. Legally speaking, the apartment has always been yours. We only recently caught the error. I felt lightheaded, and he doesn't know. Not yet. But he will soon. A slow, burning satisfaction curled in my stomach. I had spent years rebuilding myself, trying to move on, refusing to let resentment consume me. But this was a gift. I had a choice. I could quietly reclaim the apartment, taking the high road, avoiding a confrontation. Or I could let Daniel see the look on my face when he realized the home he had stolen was no longer his. I knew what I had to do. I made a call, setting up a meeting at a neutral location, a high-end cafe in the heart of the city. The pretense? Unfinished legal matters. Daniel would come, smug as always, thinking he was in control. He'd expect me to be the same broken woman he had crushed under his heel, But I wasn't that woman anymore. The day of the meeting, I arrived early, sipping my coffee with a steady hand. And then, right on schedule, Daniel walked in. He hadn't changed much. Still impeccably dressed, still carrying himself with that effortless arrogance. His lips curled into a smirk when he spotted me, the same condescending expression he had worn during our divorce. "Olivia," he said smoothly as he took a seat. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I slid the envelope across the table. "You might want to read this." His smirk barely faltered as he picked it up, his eyes scanning the words. Then slowly I watched his expression shift. The color drained from his face. His jaw tightened. He read it again, then once more, as if sheer disbelief could rewrite the words on the page. He looked up, eyes burning with anger. "This can't be right." "Oh, but it is," I said, leaning back in my chair, savoring every second. "Legally, the apartment is mine. You have 30 days to leave." The silence stretched between us, thick with years of resentment and the weight of long overdue justice. I could see the gears turning in his head, the desperate scramble for a way out. But this time, there wasn't one. For the first time in 6 years, I was the one holding the power dot, and I wasn't letting go. Daniel's hands clenched around the paper, his knuckles turning white. I could see the anger simmering beneath the surface, the way his jaw ticked, the way his breath came just a little too fast. He was unraveling, and I was there to watch it happen. What kind of trick is this? His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the underlying panic. This must be a mistake. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Oh, I thought the same thing at first. But no, Daniel, it's perfectly legal. I had it verified by multiple lawyers. His lips pressed into a thin line. There's no way. I paid for that apartment. I fought for it in court. This is impossible. I took another sip of my coffee, watching him stew in his disbelief. And yet here we are. The cafe felt smaller all of a sudden, like the walls were closing in on him. He wasn't used to losing. I remembered all too well how much he enjoyed winning, how he had relished every second of my suffering after the divorce. He had gloated, smirked, flaunted his victory like a badge of honor. And now, the tables had turned Dot. He exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I met his gaze, unflinching. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. Daniel was calculating, always looking for an angle, an escape route. He had lawyers on retainer, resources at his disposal. But I had something better. An airtight legal claim and 6 years' worth of patience. Dot, he stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over, I smiled, slow and deliberate. Oh, it absolutely is. The moment he walked out, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The weight of 6 years felt lighter somehow. But I knew Daniel. He wouldn't go down without a fight, Dot. This was only the beginning, Dot. The next few days passed in a blur of anticipation. I knew Daniel wouldn't just accept defeat. That wasn't in his nature. He would fight, claw, and manipulate his way into keeping what he believed was rightfully his. But this time, the law was on my side. Dot. The first sign of his retaliation came in the form of an email. Subject, urgent. Let's be reasonable. I almost laughed at the irony. Daniel had never been reasonable a day in his life. Dot, the message itself was predictable. He suggested we negotiate like adults, that maybe I didn't really want the apartment back, that perhaps there was a financial settlement that could work for both of us. He tried to frame it as a win-win, but I saw right through it. He wasn't offering to buy me out because he wanted to be fair. He was trying to buy time, to find a loophole, to trap me into some kind of legal entanglement that would force me to back down. I didn't respond. A day later, another email. This one less polished, more aggressive. He accused me of being vindictive, of using an outdated legal technicality to ruin his life. He claimed that taking the apartment was just my way of getting revenge, Dot. And maybe part of me enjoyed watching him squirm. Maybe, deep down, there was some satisfaction in knowing that he was the one losing this time, Dot. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, Dot. Then came the phone calls, one after another, each more desperate than the last. I let them go to voicemail, listening to his frustration mount with each message, Dot. By the end of the week, I had nearly 20 missed calls. And then, just when I thought he might finally give up, Daniel showed up at my office. I had just finished a meeting when my receptionist, Megan, appeared at my door, her expression tight with discomfort. There's a man in the lobby asking to see you. He won't leave. I didn't have to ask who it was. I stood, smoothing out my blouse, my heartbeat steady. Tell him I'm unavailable. Megan hesitated. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who takes no easily. I sighed, grabbing my bag. I'll handle it. Sure enough, Daniel was pacing near the front desk, his posture tense. He turned the second he saw me, his eyes dark with fury. We need to talk. I crossed my arms. There's nothing left to say. Oh, I think there is. His voice was low, controlled, but I knew him too well. He was barely holding it together. You can't just take my home away from me. His home. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. You mean my home? The one you stole from me 6 years ago? His jaw tightened. I didn't steal anything. I won it. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. And now you've lost. He exhaled sharply, his frustration mounting. Let's make a deal, Olivia. There is no deal, Daniel. You have 30 days. He stared at me, his breathing heavy, nostrils flaring. For the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Not just anger, not just arrogance, but something closer to fear, Dot. And that was when I realized something. Daniel wasn't just angry about losing the apartment. He was terrified of leaving it, Dot. Why? What was he hiding? The thought sent a thrill through me. Maybe this wasn't just about karma. Maybe this was my chance to uncover the truth. I lifted my chin, refusing to waver. See you at move-out day. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, furious, defeated, and for the first time, afraid. Dot. The next week passed in silence. No emails, no phone calls, no unexpected visits. I knew Daniel well enough to know that his quiet wasn't surrender. It was strategy. He was planning something. I kept a close eye on my inbox, expecting a legal challenge, a last-ditch attempt to delay the inevitable. But nothing came. Just silence, Dot. And that silence was unsettling. Dot. It wasn't until I met Emma for dinner that I let my guard down enough to voice my concerns. You think he's up to something? She asked, stirring her drink absently. I nodded, pushing my salad around my plate. He's too calm, too quiet. I expected him to fight harder. Emma leaned forward. Maybe he's already found another place. Maybe he's just accepting it. I snorted. You don't know Daniel. He doesn't accept losing. He rewrites the rules until he wins. She tapped her fingers against the table, thinking, then maybe you need to be one step ahead. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I don't know what that looks like. Legally, I have everything I need. He has no claim to the apartment anymore. Emma frowned. Then why does it feel like you haven't really won? That question haunted me all the way home. A few days later, I decided to go by the apartment, not to confront him, just to remind myself that this was real, that it was mine. Dot. The moment I stepped inside the building, I felt the weight of old memories pressing against my chest. The lobby looked the same, sleek, modern, untouched by time. The elevator doors opened with the same smooth chime. But as I stepped onto my old floor and walked toward the apartment, something felt off. Dot. The door was slightly ajar. I froze. Dot. Was he home? Had he forgotten to lock up? Or worse, was someone else inside? My pulse quickened as I pushed the door open, stepping into the dimly lit space. My eyes adjusted slowly, scanning the familiar layout. Nothing looked disturbed, but something felt wrong. That's when I saw a Dot. In the corner of the living room, stacked haphazardly, were moving boxes, not packed neatly, not labeled with care, just shoved together, as if he had gathered them in a hurry. I stepped closer, my breath shallow. A wave of unease rolled over me. Daniel wasn't preparing to move. He was scrambling. Dot. Why ? My gaze flickered across the room, and that's when I saw the papers on the kitchen counter. Bills, legal documents, past due notices. I edged forward, scanning the words. Dot. And then, there it was. The thing that changed everything. A foreclosure notice. Dot. My stomach dropped. Dot. Daniel hadn't just lost the apartment. He had been drowning in debt, desperately trying to stay afloat. The reason he hadn't fought harder. He couldn't. He had nothing left. I stared at the notice, my mind racing. Daniel had always prided himself on control, on power, and now he had lost everything. For a brief moment I felt pity. Then calmed just as quickly. I remembered the years of struggle, the nights I cried myself to sleep, the way he had left me with nothing. Karma had finally caught up with him, and I wasn't about to stop it. I turned on my heel, stepping back toward the door. But before I could leave, I heard something behind me, a soft rustling. I froze, Someone else was in the apartment, and I wasn't alone, My breath hitched as I scanned the room, heart hammering against my ribs. The rustling sound had come from the hallway leading to the bedroom. My first instinct was to bolt, but something held me in place. Had Daniel come back? Had he seen me enter? Slowly, carefully, I moved toward the hallway, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The apartment was silent now, but I knew what I had heard. Someone was here, Then, a shadow shifted in the doorway. I sucked in a sharp breath. A woman, She was standing there, half hidden by the dim lighting, her hair disheveled, her expression unreadable. But what struck me the most was the fear in her eyes. For a long, tense moment, neither of us spoke, Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "You shouldn't be here." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I took a slow step back. "Who are you?" Her eyes darted toward the door, like she was calculating an escape route. She was young, maybe late 20s, with a fragile frame and tired eyes. I hadn't expected this. I had braced myself for Daniel, for a confrontation, but this was something else entirely. Before I could say another word, she whispered, "He doesn't know I'm here." A shiver ran down my spine. I glanced at the foreclosure notice still sitting on the counter. The pieces of the puzzle were shifting, rearranging into something I hadn't considered before. Daniel wasn't just losing his apartment, He was losing control, And now, standing in front of me, was proof that he wasn't the only one suffering because of it. I swallowed hard. Did he? I trailed off, unsure how to ask the question, Her lips parted slightly, but she hesitated, her shoulders curling inward. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, "Please don't tell him you saw me." My blood ran cold. I wasn't just reclaiming my home. I was stepping into something far more dangerous than I had ever imagined, And for the first time since I had received that legal notice, I wondered if I was truly prepared for what came next. I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady. "I won't tell him." Her body sagged with relief, but the fear in her eyes never faded. She was watching me, waiting to see if I would leave, if I would press for more answers. But I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I glanced around the apartment, the stacks of unpaid bills, the hastily packed boxes, the way she flinched every time the floor creaked beneath my feet. This wasn't just Daniel facing financial ruin. Something else was happening here. I looked back at her. "Who are you?" She hesitated, then whispered, I'm Sophie." The name didn't ring a bell. She wasn't someone from our past, not someone I'd ever heard Daniel mention. But there was something in the way she said it, like she was afraid even of claiming her own identity. "How long have you been here?" I asked She bit her lip, her gaze flickering toward the bedroom. "A while." I waited, giving her space to say more. When she didn't, I glanced at the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, revealing just a sliver of darkness beyond And then I noticed something that sent a sharp pang of unease through me. A small duffel bag sat near the entrance to the room, half-zipped, clothes spilling out Not the kind of bag you pack when you're moving in. The kind of bag you grab when you're trying to leave. A sick realization settled in my stomach. "Sophie," I said carefully, "are you trying to get away from him?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Her fingers twisted in the hem of her sweater, and for a second I thought she might deny it. But then, barely audible, she whispered, "Yes." The word sent a chill through me. I had spent years hating Daniel for what he did to me, for the way he took everything, and left me to pick up the pieces. But I had never feared him, not like this. "What has he done to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophie shook her head quickly. "I can't. I don't She broke off, her eyes darting toward the door as if she expected him to walk in at any second. I didn't need her to say it. I could see it in the way her hands trembled, in the way her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to make herself as small as possible. I took a slow breath, grounding myself. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" She nodded, but I wasn't convinced. "And do you have a way to get there?" This time, she hesitated. I reached into my bag, pulling out my wallet. I didn't have time to second-guess this. Whatever was happening, she needed to leave. Now. I pulled out a few $100s and pressed it into her hand. "Go. Get somewhere safe. Don't tell him where you are." Her eyes widened. I can't take this." "You can and you will," I said firmly. "Don't argue, just go." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded, clutching the money like it was a lifeline. Then comma just as she turned toward the door. She froze. Footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Coming down the hall. My stomach flipped. Daniel was home. Sophie's eyes darted to mine, panic flooding her features. She was trapped. If he found her with me, there was no telling how he would react. There was only one option. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the hallway closet. Just as the front door swung open. The closet was small, cramped, and smelled faintly of old wood and dust. I pressed my back against the wall, barely daring to breathe as Sophie trembled beside me. Footsteps thudded against the hardwood floor. Daniel was inside. I could hear the shift of fabric, the rustle of something being tossed onto the counter. Probably his keys, maybe his wallet. Then, silence. A silence that stretched, thick and suffocating. I didn't dare move. Sophie's breath was ragged, barely contained, and I prayed to whatever force in the universe existed that he wouldn't hear it. Then came the sound of his shoes against the floor again, this time slower. Pacing. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle in my body tensed. He was thinking, processing. Something was off, and he knew it. Then comma his voice. Low. Calculated. "I know you're here, Olivia." My heart nearly stopped. Sophie clutched my arm so tightly it hurt, but I barely noticed. My mind was spinning, calculating my next move. I could stay hidden, hope he gave up. Or I could face him. There was no winning here, only choosing which kind of fight I was willing to have. I inhaled sharply, then pushed the closet door open. Daniel stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, eyes dark and unreadable. He hadn't aged much since I last saw him up close. Still sharp, still arrogant, still exuding that quiet, cold authority that had made him so dangerous in court all those years ago. "You're trespassing," he said smoothly. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "It's my apartment, Daniel." His jaw tensed. "Not for another 2 weeks." I folded my arms, trying to ignore the frantic beating of my heart. "I came to see what kind of mess you were leaving behind." My eyes flicked pointedly to the stacks of unpaid bills. "Looks like you're in deeper than I thought." His lips twitched, a ghost of a smirk. "You think you've won, don't you?" I shrugged. "Looks that way." His eyes darkened. "Careful, Olivia." And there it was, that thinly veiled warning, the same tone he used to use in court when he wanted me to know I was standing on dangerous ground. I refused to flinch. Or what? He studied me for a long moment, then exhaled, shaking his head. "You always did like making things harder than they needed to be." Something shifted behind his gaze, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Something bitter. For the first time, I saw what I hadn't before. Daniel was unraveling. The control he had always wielded so effortlessly was slipping through his fingers, and he knew it. I had won. I had finally won. And then, a sound. Small, barely audible. Coming from behind me, I stiffened. Daniel's gaze flickered past me, toward the hallway closet. And his entire expression changed. The smirk disappeared. The mask of cold indifference shattered Dot. His eyes narrowed. What was that? I turned slightly, blocking his line of sight. What was what? He took a step forward, Dot, and I knew Dot. He had heard Sophie. I tried to stay calm, to act natural, but he could see it in my face. Dot, the realization hit him like a switch being flipped. Dot, his lips curled into something cruel. You're hiding someone. My stomach dropped. Dot, Sophie was still in that closet, Dot. And Daniel was going to find her. Daniel's eyes gleamed with something dark, an ugly kind of triumph, like he had just uncovered a secret he wasn't supposed to know. He took a slow step forward, gaze locked onto mine, as if daring me to stop him. I forced myself to stay calm, to think. I had the advantage. Legally, the apartment was mine. He couldn't call the cops on me. But this wasn't about the apartment anymore. This was about control, Dot. And I refused to let him win. Dot, he moved toward the hallway, but I stepped in his path. You don't want to do this, Daniel. His smirk deepened. And why not? Because there's a terrified woman hiding in that closet. Because I don't know what you've done to her. Because if I let you open that door, I don't know how this ends. I swallowed those words and tilted my head, keeping my voice even. Because if you make this difficult, I'll make sure your foreclosure becomes the least of your problems. For a second, his expression flickered. Just the smallest crack in his confidence. But he recovered quickly, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You don't scare me, Olivia. I held my ground. You should be scared of what happens next. Silence stretched between us. A standoff, Dot. Then, his gaze flickered past me again. Dot, and he lunged. I moved instinctively, stepping directly into his path, slamming my hands against his chest to shove him back. It wasn't much. I wasn't strong enough to stop him physically, but it threw him off balance enough time for me to reach into my bag and pull out my phone. I held it up between us, thumb hovering over the screen. You take one more step, and I'm calling 911. His expression darkened. You wouldn't. Try me. His jaw clenched. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. He wanted to call my bluff. He wanted to keep pushing, to win. But for the first time, he wasn't sure he could. I didn't waver. I kept my hand steady, phone angled so he could see the emergency dial screen. Dot. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of us moved. Dot. Then, slowly, Daniel exhaled. Get out. I didn't move. Dot. His voice sharpened. Get out. I hesitated, heart pounding. Sophie was still in the closet. If I left, would he find her? Would he take his anger out on her instead? But then, she needed me to leave. Dot. She needed an opening, a chance to get away. Dot. And I was going to give it to her. I forced a small, satisfied smile. Enjoy your last 2 weeks, Daniel. Then I turned and walked to the door, feeling his gaze burning into my back. I didn't let my hands shake. I didn't let my breath hitch. I kept walking. Steady. Sure. In control. Dot. And just as I stepped over the threshold, I caught the faintest movement from the hallway closet. Dot. Sophie was watching. Dot waiting. Dot. And the second I was gone, she was going to run. I closed the door behind me, heart pounding. Dot now, all I could do was hope she made it out before he found her first. I walked down the hall, forcing myself to keep a steady pace. I didn't dare run. Running would mean I was scared. Running would mean Daniel had won. Again. But inside, my body screamed at me to go faster, to get as far away from that apartment as possible. Dot. As soon as I reached the elevator, I yanked out my phone, hands trembling now that I was out of his sight. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before typing out a message. Olivia, get out now. I didn't have Sophie's number. I didn't even know her last name. But she had slipped my number into her pocket when I handed her the cash, her fingers brushing mine in a silent plea. If she had the chance to use it, she would. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. The moment the doors closed, my breath came out in a shaky rush. What the hell had I just walked into? I had expected confrontation, anger, maybe even a desperate last-minute plea from Daniel. I had not expected to find a woman trapped in his apartment, hiding, terrified, and I sure as hell hadn't expected to be helping her escape. The elevator jolted to a stop. I braced myself, stepping into the lobby with my head held high. The doorman barely glanced up as I strode past, and I forced myself not to look back, even though every instinct in me screamed to check if Daniel was following outside comma. The crisp Chicago air hit me like a slap, and I inhaled deeply, trying to steady my racing heart. Then, my phone vibrated. I fumbled to unlock it, pulse hammering as I saw the message. Unknown number. I'm out. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees almost buckled. She made it. I swallowed past the lump in my throat and typed back, Olivia. Where are you? A pause. Then, unknown. Number, nowhere safe. My stomach clenched. I glanced around, scanning the street, the cars, the people. I had no idea where she was, or how far she had gotten. But she had run, and now she needed somewhere to go. Without thinking, I typed, Olivia, come to me. There was another pause. My pulse pounded. Then, finally, unknown number. Okay. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what this meant, or what kind of danger I was inviting into my life. All I knew was that Sophie needed help. And for the first time in 6 years, I had the power to do something about it. I didn't hear from Sophie for 3 days. 3 days of checking my phone every few minutes, of scanning the street whenever I stepped outside, of jumping at shadows. I didn't know if she had managed to disappear, or if Daniel had found her. Then, on the 4th day, I got a message. Unknown number. It's time. No explanation. No context. But I knew exactly what it meant. I told her to meet me at a coffee shop across town, a place where neither of us would be recognized. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The Sophie I had met in Daniel's apartment had been fragile, broken. The woman standing in front of me now was something else entirely. Determined, focused, ready. She slid into the seat across from me, eyes sharp. I have something for you. She pulled out a flash drive and pushed it across the table. Security footage, audio recordings, emails, everything. My breath caught. How? Her expression was unreadable. I lived with him for a year. You pick up things. I hesitated, then reached for the flash drive. Are you sure about this? Sophie's lips curled into a small, cold smile. Oh, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I spent the next week burying Daniel Carter. It wasn't hard. Not with the things Sophie had given me. She hadn't been the first woman he'd manipulated, not by a long shot. The recordings painted a damning picture. His threats, his control, the way he made sure the women in his life had nowhere else to go. He had ruined lives. And now it was his turn. I started small, an anonymous tip to his employer about his questionable financial dealings. Then, an email to a journalist friend of mine, laying out a very interesting story about a prominent businessman who had a habit of trapping women in financial and emotional debt. The story spread like wildfire. Then, the final nail in the coffin. I scheduled a meeting with Daniel, sent him an email from an untraceable account, telling him there was an investor interested in saving him from financial ruin. Of course he showed up. And when he walked into that conference room, expecting to charm his way into more money, Sophie was waiting for him. She played the recordings one by one. Every threat, every manipulation, every disgusting, coercive thing he had ever said. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his fingers twitch like he wanted to reach for his phone, his briefcase, anything that could get him out of this. But there was no way out. By the time she was done, he was pale, shaking. She leaned in, voice soft. This isn't even the worst part. Then she pulled out her phone and held it up, showing the news article. His face. His name. The headline screaming the truth. His career. Over. His reputation. Destroyed. His money. Gone. And just for good measure, I made sure the IRS got an anonymous tip about some very interesting discrepancies in his tax returns. Daniel Carter was finished. A week later, I stood outside my apartment. No comma, not Daniel's apartment. Mine. His name had been removed from the lease. His belongings had been seized by creditors. The locks had been changed. I turned the key and stepped inside. The space was empty. No furniture, no reminders of him. Just 4 walls, a floor, and a ceiling. A blank slate. I took a deep breath. The air smelled different. Lighter. Free. My phone buzzed. Sophie. He's trying to leave the country. Didn't work. IRS froze his accounts. Poor thing, I smirked. Then comma, another message. Sophie. What now? I glanced around my apartment, my home, and felt something settle inside me. I had won. Not just the apartment. Not just the legal battle. I had taken everything from him the way he had once taken everything from me. But unlike him, I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life chasing revenge. I typed back, Olivia. Now I live. Then I tossed my phone onto the counter, sank into the silence of my new home, and let myself smile. For the first time in 6 years, I was truly, finally free.